Stu's done a little bit on the Morris. He's actually been away. Stu's had a well-deserved holiday, so he's actually been away for a little bit. So he's only actually come back today. So there's not been a huge amount of progress on the Morris. He's been working on carrying on with the bonnet. We left off where he'd shaped and beaded a reinforcer for the back edge of the bonnet to try and stop the sides of the bonnet flexing and just add some reinforcement to it. He's working on the fitment of that and fitting the latch boxes for the final part for the lengthy saga that's been the bonnet latching mechanisms. He's just working on fitting those latch boxes to the bonnet, fitting them to the reinforcer section, getting that all welded together so that then he can bond the whole lot into the bonnet panel and get all that finished off. So yeah, he's getting pretty close now to having all that complete. Additionally to that, I think we introduced George probably a couple of weeks ago. So I'll just pause for a sec. There's a bit of cutting going on the paint booth installation. I think we introduced George a couple of weeks ago. He's our new guy, straight out of university. He's our youngest recruit, who's now on board. General work around the place, but a large proportion of his work at the moment is CAD work and engineering design, which is design is his background. And he's been doing some work on the doors, and I've gone and forgotten to bring my prop through, but it's all right. That'll be shown in a bit of detail in a minute. But we are re-engineering the door handles. The customer who owns the car wanted a different design of door handle to replace the Morris design. The Morris handle mechanism doesn't really lend itself to incorporating central locking for a whole variety of reasons I'm not going to go into because it gets quite complicated. But it's very difficult to fit central locking to a standard Morris door release mechanism. Now, eagle-eyed viewers will remember that we fitted mini anti-burst door locks, Mark III Mini anti-burst door locks to these doors now, and mini window lift mechanisms. And we're finding that a lot of the mini parts are quite good, cross over quite well, unsurprisingly, because it's a very simple door, flat glass, etc. They cross quite well over to using in this door. We touched on the electric windows before, but what we've got to do is make a way of modifying the handles to a design that the customer likes, and also making those so that they are compatible with the mini door latch mechanisms and also with a central locking motor. So there's a little bit of engineering to do there. It's actually reasonably, not super complex, but there's a mechanism of design. A design of a mechanism to go on in there, which needs to do a variety of things. It needs to move various pull and push rods by the correct distances to operate the latch mechanism and the lock mechanism. So I'm going to hand over to George at this point for his first little retro power clip and let him explain that mechanism, because he'll be able to explain it a lot better than I can because he designed it.
Right, so this week I've been working on primarily the Morris door handles, which, if we can look at here, this is the version 1, which effectively converts the Morris handles into working with a mini latch. So the door handle works like this, left and right, and then we needed to convert it so it does, if we just go here, converts it into an up and down motion to work with a latch. So this is the version 1, and then this is the prototype of it, which consequently is broken because it didn't quite work. But we've been working on it, and now we are on to version 2, which is looking a little bit different, but effectively works out all the kinks of the prototype, and fingers crossed we will have a working prototype that fully works by the end of this week, but we shall see.
All right, so thank you, George, for explaining that. That's all nicely done, and there'll be a few iterations along the way, as I'm sure he'll have probably explained. But the 3D printed parts that we have now will probably be printed another couple of times yet, just to make sure that everything fits and works before they are all machined in billet. But yeah, we're looking forward to getting to the stage of seeing all that. I'm going to try and remember everything. I know various things that Stu's been doing on this. He's been doing a little bit more work on the front of the car. I've walked to the back and then gesticulate to the front. I know Jamie's got some decent bits of footage of Stu finishing off again, last week we covered the reinforcer in the underbonnet area that stops the wings of the bonnet flapping and also mounts the two catches that we're using to latch the bonnet down. It's become a bit of an engineering, it's become a bit of a heavy engineering project, that bonnet catch assembly, but it's now all finished and done. Stu's just finished putting the safety catch on it today, I noticed because he was showing me. So he's just finished putting the safety catch arrangement on, but he's also welded in and spot welded in all of the actual reinforcer assembly into the back of the bonnet, bonded and spot welded all that into the back of the bonnet now. So we're really pleased with that. That's working very well. There's a lot of work gone into it. It's an expensive way of making a bonnet latch, one would have to say, but it's really very cool and really nice and a really nice setup, and it works. And we're very happy with the end result. It's been a long time getting there, but we're very, very happy with the end result. That was in no part due to how Stu's worked on it. That was entirely down to the fact that it is quite a complicated thing to achieve, to do what we wanted to do with it. So that's the front end complete, and then in the back to the old problem that we faced most of the way through, the post-chassis design of this car is space. There is no space in it. It's tiny. So we want a reasonable sized fuel tank because the owner plans on doing a reasonable distances of driving in it. He lives in Scotland and he's planning on doing some reasonable distances of driving in it. And he also wants a spare wheel. Now, we're having a space saver spare. There's absolutely no way you get a full-size spare in. We're having a space saver spare, but obviously this area in the middle, we're fighting for space with the underside of the car with the silencer because there's very little room for a silencer underneath the car. So we're putting a very large silencer, well, there is a very large silencer that goes, built by Simpson Exhaust, that goes underneath the car in this slightly raised section that we put in to allow for the silencer. The complication is we need to get the spare wheel in there, and also the owner wants a reasonable sound system in the car, including a subwoofer. We were trying to get that in the boot. It just isn't happening. There is no space physically in the boot. She now moved to mounting that inside the car in the rear bulkhead assembly. That's going to have a trim panel, which kind of builds into mounting and the subwoofer's mounted behind it. That all goes into the rear bulkhead panel there. So we've had to abandon the idea of putting it in the boot. It just will not fit. In terms of the fuel tank, we're putting a little cutout in the bottom of the fuel tank. Obviously, the fuel tank's not made yet. There's a preliminary drawing on CAD. We've checked for fit, checked to be able to make sure, because obviously you've got to be able to make sure you can actually get it in and out of the boot, which is the other thing. It'd be very easy to draw it and find you can't actually fit it in and out. So it fits in and out. It has the capacity we need. The outlet goes through this little recess here, and so the fuel pumps sit under the car. There's a little recess there that the surge tank drops into as you fit the tank, so there's enough height to get the tank in and then drop it through that. Anyway, all that waffle. The tank fits in there, that's great, but we've got to get a spare wheel in. That needed to fit between the rear catch and the tank. Now we're actually putting a little recess in the tank to allow the wheel to tuck in and then sit just above this mount that Stu's made here, which will carry a strap. And then he's put two more little strap mounts down here on the corners of this strong raised section here, so all the stresses get loaded into the right area. And then he's built this rather nice, almost excessively nice, but if you're going to do something, you do it properly. He's made a little saddle for the space saver tyre to sit into there that also was also an extension of the original bonnet catch mount. So that all sits in at the bottom there, and then the tyre straps down. It pulls it into that, and it's tucked under the tank at the top. So it's super safe. Even in a pretty major accident, that's all well restrained. Nothing can fly out. We're very happy with the way that's all worked out. As I say, there's a few bits of almost excessive engineering in there, but again, if you're going to do it right, if you're going to do it, we might as well just make it pretty, make a sort of art piece of it, and just make it neat and do it right. And it's all there now. We're very happy with that. He's also then been fitting various tabs. He'd done some before for trims. He's been adding some various other tabs for holding various bits of trim in place, just so that once the fuel tank's in and everything else is in, then we can put the trims in to give us a tiny luggage space. It would be very tiny with the spare wheel in. Obviously, you can beach the spare wheel and have a bit more luggage space if you do it. You can pick and choose between tiny luggage and spare wheel, or no spare wheel and a bit more luggage. That's your choice. So that's pretty much. We are pretty much there. There's a bit of final fettling on bits of metalwork, but I think the list is pretty well getting ticked off now. There's not a lot left to do. So that's coming on quite well. And the Morris, which is absolutely on the last leg of metalwork now. Stu's been going through all sorts of details on it. In the boot, he was working on mountings for a Space Saver spare wheel, which I think I mentioned before. He's been doing the mounts for the solenoid that will release the boot. He's been doing mounts for trim panels in the boot. He's done the mount for the subwoofer, which is actually going to now mount on the inside of the rear bulkhead area, and we're going to incorporate a surround for that into the upholstery. He's been doing the handbrake cable mounts, so we've actually been able to use MX5 handbrake cables. They route really nicely. He's made the bracket on the shell that the handbrake cable outers go into, and it leaves us with just a real short link to go in between the Escort handbrake lever and the MX5 compensator, which will just literally be like a rose jointed turnbuckle, so that's worked out really neatly. We've tackled the extremely perilous job, which I think we were building up to last time, of doing the bonnet louvres. We call that a shit or bust job because basically if it goes wrong you pretty much scrap the bonnet, or at least you're going to have to spend a load of time welding a new piece in. But thankfully it went perfectly. We wanted to get those in there, because it's a nice touch in keeping with the fairly aggressive look that it's got elsewhere, but I was also quite conscious of the fact that the design of the engine bay doesn't have an awful lot of airflow area, if you like, in terms of through flow, getting heat out of the engine bay. So I figured anything we can add to try and get a bit more heat out of the engine bay will be a good thing. So that's another thing. I don't know if we showed already, he finished all of the reinforcement section. That's looking really cool, the way he's done the reinforcer to stiffen this rear edge. And that sort of flows around into the shape of the latch holders here that hold the pins that latch into those receptacles at the bottom. So I think we finally cracked what has been a fairly lengthy process to try and perfect the fit and method of opening and lashing of the bonnet. So as part of the final mechanical build-up, we want to get the actual wheels. Through the whole process, we've been using a set of mock-up wheels, which were basically the dimensions we wanted to use. They were 16-inch. The final wheels are 15-inch. And I've got the final wheels made very slightly further in to give us just a tiny bit more arch clearance. And I want to actually fit those wheels, and through a weird sequence of events, that actually means making the final colour choice for the car, because the wheel centres we're going to paint body coloured. They're split rims, and to build them without painting them means a load of hassle then to cut all the sealer back out to take them apart again, so it makes much more sense to make the colour choice, then we can paint the wheel centres, then we can bolt up and seal together the split rims, get the tyres on, get them on the car, and do the final checks on all the clearances, which will be through all points of suspension travel, all points of steering lock, make sure we're happy with all of that. At that point, we'll also spec the open and closed lengths for the front coilovers. And then I think we're pretty much at the point of blowing it all apart again and getting it ready to paint. There's going to be some lead work involved, where some of the custom metalwork's been done, particularly around some of these areas. There's a little bit of leading needed, and maybe just on the door shuts, just to improve the fit. What you don't want is, you can obviously use some degree of filler to get the lines perfect, but you don't really want it on a corner or an edge. So, for instance, where the back of the wing meets the door, there might be some undulations in there which we might decide to lead, or it would just be hammer work to get it to be perfect and filing across the gap, so that we don't end up with a big build-up of filler on the edge of the panel. But yeah, I mean, we're very, very close to stripping this down and getting it ready for paint.
We'll go down here and squeeze our way through to Stu at the Morris. And here is Stu beavering away on a door. I'm going to duck round this side because Stu's straight on camera then. It's Stu's favourite thing. Stu's working away and has been slogging away on lots and lots of awkward bits, basically. It's the awkward stage, which it has been for the last, I don't know what now, 4 weeks or so, maybe a bit more. Just lots and lots of fiddly jobs. At the moment, George has done a lovely job of engineering a door pull and catch operation mechanism to go where the door handle goes in the door. But now Stu's got the other end of that job, which is then making that liaise with all the other bits of the door, and then also making a sealing system, making the door accept a sealing system that will work, and doing quite a lot of other work. He's obviously, previously you've seen, he's done the electric window fitment, but he's been modifying the top of the doors because we've changed the quarter glass shape, and we've made it one-piece glass, so there's no quarter glass, there's just a billet infill panel in the corner. He's had to weld sections into the top of the doors, and at the same time also make them accept a slightly more modern seal, so that the top of the doors are just a bit nicer. And also make electric window mechanisms that you can actually get in and out of the door as a live demonstration of why these things are slightly fiddly. It's quite tricky to get everything into a door this small. This is one of the problems with this car, and this illustrates it beautifully, is that when fitting electric windows, a bigger piece of glass, a modern door catch mechanism, central locking, etc., etc., to these doors, space gets very, very tight. So yeah, it is a little bit challenging, but he's getting there now. The catches now work. The release handle operates. He's mocked up release handle that operates. That releases the door catch. The central lock, the space for the central locking motor, that now fits. There's room for the pull rods for everything. Catches work. And I believe he's done the fabrication on the top of the other door, which is just here, just behind me. So he's done the fabrication on the top of the other door, which will now accept the seals, accept the glass, accept everything that's got a slot through the top of the door, because it's all a bit bigger now. So that'll all fit. And now he's got to do the same fabrication on that door as he's already done on that door. And then both doors will accept a more modern and off-the-shelf available flocked rubber waste belt seal that'll go along the top of there for the door glass. So yeah, it's good progress on that. It's a challenging job, and I think Stu's now at the stage where he'll be glad to see the finish of it. I think now it becomes a bit of a slog at this stage, and working on your own in a rather small corner with crap related to civil engineering piled all around you doesn't make the day any easier. So it's I think he's looking forward to the final hurdles on this, but it's getting very, very close now. It's not too far away. He's been working on the screen wash tank. Again, the viewers who with memories will remember that we have got header tanks fitted to the bulkhead, and then for the screen wash tank, that will be feeding a screen wash tank in the footwell. Something I've done before, and it works it's quite a neat setup. Keeps the weight down low and keeps it out of the engine bay where we're really short on space. So Stu started the work on that. He's machined up some aluminium bobbins for the tank to mount on, got them welded into the back half of the tank. He's patterned and folded up the two halves of the tank. The only thing we're waiting for on that now is a small section of 6mm aluminium tubing, which will be the dip tube for the pickup for the washer pump, because the washer pump's an external to tank pump, and because it's the bottom of the tank is quite deep and slim, it needs a dip tube to pick up from that, so that's going to be welded inside the tank. So we can't weld the two halves of the tank together until the dip tube's all stitched down inside the tank and out through where the bar, and that'll have a little barb on the machined onto the end of that tube for the little flexible pipe that feeds the washer pump. But yeah, we're just waiting on delivery of that piece of aluminium tube, which may be here today, maybe here Monday, but as soon as we've got that, then that can be shaped up, cut through the tank, welded in, and then the two halves of the tank then can be welded together, and that's all pretty much done then, and that'll be carpeted and basically act as the end of the footwell for the passenger. That'll be quite a nice sort of bulkhead end to the footwell, and footrest if you wanted it to be as well. So it's that'll be quite a neat setup. So yeah, that's the other thing that Stu's been working on this week. As usual, I've been working on things nothing to do with cars, largely paint booth and making holes in roofs and things like that. So yeah, I've been away from it, but I can see the finishing line where I'll be able to get back on to working on cars, which will be quite nice actually. I'm quite looking forward to it. So anyway, I think that pretty much rounds things off for this week. So hope you enjoyed my ramblings, and I think Cal will be with you, or Cal or both of us will be with you again next week to give you another rundown of what's been going on. So.
The Morris, Stu has been pushing ahead with. He was working on the doors, so we did single piece glass conversion, which we showed previously. There was just a detail left to do on that, in that where we cut out a section here, where the original quarter light used to fit, it needed a return edge making. And then when we were looking at that, we thought, well, actually, we want an even return edge of a size we can get a common seal onto. So we've just found what size flange a Mark II Escort window seal, I think they're called waist belt seals possibly, but the seal that sits across here fits onto, and made up flanges for the inside and outside to suit that run all the way along. So that's done. And then the other thing Stu was working on was the plinths that the door release handles are going to go onto, because the original position is, with the new seating position, is too far forward. You basically can't reach it without leaning massively forward in your seat. So we've revised that. Stu's made a little raised plinth that gives clearance for the handle in here. I mean, we're going to make our own version of this handle, but we decided it probably made sense to stick with a rotary design, because the amount of bulk on the back of that handle mechanism is very slim, and we haven't got a lot of space between the glass and the inner skin here, so it made sense to retain that basic design. So it's made those little plinths there to bolt those into. That looks really good. And then he has been working on the absolute final details. So been running threaded bosses down the inner wing for where the power steering hoses and the aircon hoses are going to go. Actually, that's triggered a thought in my mind about something we meant to show previously, and I don't think we did, is the reservoirs that are in there. So there are currently 3D printed models of the brake and clutch fluid reservoir on this side, and the power steering and screen wash reservoir on that side. Those are going to be machined in aluminium. We've got 3D printed models there, so we could do the mounting points in the bulkhead. They're essentially symmetrical tanks. On that side, there's an internal division in the tank, and you've got the power steering fluid one side. It's got an outlet that's actually an integral machine piece into the bottom, which feeds the pump. The return, also for neatness' sake, goes in the bottom. And what we've done is we've done an internal gallery inside the tank that leads up to the top. So the oil return feed is to the top of the tank, but the pipe actually connects to the bottom, just so it looks really neat with the pipes coming out the bottom. And then on the screen wash, it's much like the idea we first came up with for Gordon Murray's Escort, in that it's a small reservoir that then feeds a pipe that goes through the bulkhead to a fabricated tank in the footwell, which basically forms the passenger's footrest. And then on the one on this side, it's basically a single reservoir for the clutch and the two brake circuits, 3 outlets, little baffles between them, a hole in the side for a level sender, which will put the warning light on if the fluid level is low. And yeah, that's looking like it's going to be really neat. So we're happy to green light the machining of those bits now. But the 3D prints mean we can do anything we need to do on the shell without actually having the final models, or the final part, should I say. So yeah, we're pretty much in the very final stages. Stu's just doing some edits on the oil cooler and aircon radiator mount. It was a little bit tight on the hoses on this side, so we're just adjusting it so it comes over slightly. And I think he's also making it so that the whole lot can come out in one piece. There was a couple of the brackets that we'd done previously that were a little bit difficult to get to, and there was room for improvement there, so we're just working on that. And then I think that's basically it. It's going to be doing the lead loading on the body, and then we can strip it apart, start prepping it for paint, which thankfully now we have an accessible body prep area we'll actually be able to do. So yeah, hopefully next week we might have a fully commissioned and functioning paint booth. Dependent on the schedule with the concrete, we might have concreted in the old extraction pit, and we can actually start looking forward to tidying the place and having a clean, organised and fully functional workshop. And on that note, I'll see you next week.
We move on to Morris. I'm just going to look on my list to make sure I'm not missing too much here. I've actually got to fight my way through piles of junk here because there's just stuff everywhere. I mean, in fact, I can stop here because there's a nice example which Jamie probably hasn't got any footage of at the minute, but I'm sure he'll manage to get a bit tomorrow. Stu's just doing the very final tapping and filing on these rear wings. They were very, very close, but they needed a little bit more work. So he's just been doing that, as you can see all the little marks where he's been tapping it up and then filing it off, tapping it up, filing it off, just getting the final shape dealt with on there. I'm just looking at my list to remember what else. Yeah, there was a little bit of finishing off on the bonnet release. The bonnet latch mechanisms were all finished, but he just got to finish making the handle for the bonnet release mechanism, which is now done. That's all trialled. He's put the cables in, actually finally assembled everything as a mock-up to check that it does all release. It releases evenly, it latches evenly, and it does everything it should do. Which after a bit of toing and froing and a bit of grease on things and a bit of filing of sharp edges and generally fettling everything, that all now works. And the full bonnet release mechanism's all good. Then he's also done some aluminium fabrication and fabricated the screen wash tank for the footwell. He'd started doing that. He's now finished all of that off because we were waiting for a couple of parts in order to do that. He's now got the parts, done the welding, that all fits, and that's all done. Yeah, battery tray. He's also finished the fabrication of the battery tray. I think Scott has started that. Stu's finished that off, done the bracketry for that, and done the various fixings on that, and got that all bolted in and done. But yeah, the lead work. Stu's about to start. Jamie's just prompted me. I think he's done a few little bits of lead. I'm just seeing. I can see bits of lead in here, so he's done some somewhere. I'm not quite.
Filler cap.
Yes, he's been doing a bit of lead work around here. But there's quite a lot of lead work to do on the front. There's a bit of lead work to do on the rear wings. There's a bit of lead work to do on various interfaces. There's bits of lead to go back over where there was lead on the original car. So there's still quite a lot of lead work to do. At some point Gaz might be working on that with him. We'll probably have more footage for the next episode of the lead work, because there's quite a lot of that to do on this car. We do the lead work before we do the zinc metal spraying, which is a bit of a jeopardy. Introduces a bit of jeopardy, because it means that when I'm doing the zinc spraying, I have to be very careful not to overheat any sections of the car with the zinc metal spray gun and melt the lead back out. It's actually very easily done, because the zinc metal spray gun absolutely belches heat out. It's a huge quantity of heat that comes out of that metal spray gun. It's very easy to melt the lead out, so I have to be very, very careful doing that job. But you don't really want to do the job the other way around either, otherwise you end up, you have to put quite a lot of heat in during the application of the lead, and it's a much slower and more steady operation, and it would be very easy to burn the zinc at that stage, which would be even worse, because then we'd have to re-zinc metal spray it and you'd have jeopardy twice. So we figured that the best way around is to do the lead first and then just be really careful doing the zinc metal spraying, because obviously once the lead work's done, the next stage with this car will be to blast it all, which we're getting pretty close to now, and then zinc metal spray it. So that's going to be coming up fairly soon. I know another little job that Stu was actually doing earlier was just finishing off a couple of parts to do with the handbrake mechanism as well. I know that because he was asking me something about it, so I don't know if we've got footage of that, but I do know that he's been doing a little bit on the handbrake mechanism as well, and just finalising that. So we are pretty much, I keep saying this after week, but we are pretty much getting there. There's a lot of body finessing now that you'll probably see on the next episode. Will be a lot of tapping and filing, and a lot of lead and filing. So lots of filing going on, and lots of tap in the background. And yeah, that's where we're at with that.